You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I waited 8 months for that. I put up with 8 months of incessant trolling, talking about how this game was circled and how you were going to make Juice Wells hurt. I heard about how South Carolina was so much better and this is the best defense that Ole Miss was going to face and all of that. Well, the end result was Ole Miss 27, Mid-Carolina 3 in a game that honestly was not that close, and South Carolina did not belong on the field with Ole Miss. They just didn't. They did not belong on the field with Ole Miss. You could have played that game for 8 quarters and South Carolina was not going to score a touchdown on Ole Miss. Honestly, the best play that South Carolina had was counting on Lane Kiffin to self-destruct, which he tried to do in the only points that South Carolina was able to score. Honestly, I'm dead serious. If that game would have gone on for 8 minutes or 8 quarters, South Carolina was not going to score a touchdown in that game. Ole Miss is so freaking back, and they're establishing an identity, and it's a completely antithesis of an identity to a Lane Kiffin team, and I am here for it, man. I am absolutely here for it. It is going to be fantastic, and it is the fact that Ole Miss's defense is legitimately dominant and legitimately good. And even when the offense doesn't necessarily show up and you have injuries like Henry Parrish and Matt Jones looked legitimately injured in that game. Trey Harris went out in the second quarter and did not come back in. Normally on a Lane Kiffin team, when you take injuries like that, you would incessantly freak out. But with this defense, man, this is special. This is special to the point where Ole Miss is in a position to go down to Baton Rouge, win the game with their defense. Take the best part of the LSU game, which is the offense, and then even with their offense, completely outscore the Tigers. It's a game that Ole Miss is going to be favored to win, and they should be. And I don't care that LSU has a bye week. If the Ole Miss defense that played today shows up again against LSU, Ole Miss is going to win that game by multiple scores. So Ole Miss is getting ready to put the L in LSU. But this was a big win over South Carolina. Let's look at the numbers. Ole Miss only had 17 first downs. They gave up 19 in that game, but they played much cleaner with penalties and allowed bend but don't break situations. South Carolina was only 5 of 16 on third down, less than 33%. 1 for 4 on fourth down, including one of the most boneheaded fake punts I've ever seen. Somebody was reading their own clippings about Beamer ball. They ran that, and at that point, that completely turned the game around, and Ole Miss took control of it. South Carolina had 313 yards of total offense, 162 passing, even though they had to throw the ball. They did have 151 rushing, and I think they had like a 30-yard run from Lenora Sellers, but they only averaged 3.5 per carry. Pretty much Ole Miss contained them. South Carolina was penalized more than Ole Miss, including the most boneheaded taunting penalty by a true freshman I've ever seen. He got that, kept that alive, and South Carolina won the time of possession war for the game. So let's bring this in real quick and look at the box score of the game. All right, Jackson Dart, I talked about going into this game, doesn't generally have 2 bad to mid games in a row, and he did not play particularly well against Kentucky. The second half of this game, he missed passes that he doesn't normally miss. And he didn't quite look right. Now, credit to South Carolina's defense on that. And granted, they weren't good enough offensively to do anything, but defensively, they were able to play kind of an exciting brand, especially with those ends. Henry Parrish had 21 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. It looked like he hurt his collarbone at the end of the game. We'll have to find out about that. Matt Jones got rolled up on, did not play particularly well. We did not see Ulysses Bentley. We did not see Rashad Amos, but it looks like we are going to see both of them against LSU if we're going to be honest about it. Juice Wells dropped a couple of passes that could have been a touchdown. He could have easily had 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He reached for the goal line, ended up fumbling out of the back of the end zone. This is a game that Ole Miss should have probably won 45-3. They weren't quite able to do that. Trey Harris had 3 for 81. Jordan Watkins appeared 5 for 72. That was fantastic. Caden Lee 2 for 22. Caden Prieskorn had 1 for 13. There was a lot more variability in the offense, and the offense in the early part of the game was much more effective because of it. When Ole Miss fell into the trap of throwing the ball downfield in the second half, it was a little bit problematic for them. Lenore Sellers basically did everything for South Carolina's offense. He was 20 of 32 for 162 passing. Rushing, he had 15 for 55. And Oscar Attaway had 34. Rocket Sanders had 29. Ole Miss did a good job against the run, but running the ball was really all that South Carolina could do in this game. And they were okay with taking a couple of yards every single carry. TJ Daugherty led the team in tackles with 13, had 11 solos, including 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and a pass defense. Second was Suntarian Perkins, who had 12 tackles, 6 solos, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Trey Amos was third, had 8 total tackles and a pass defense and an interception. Corey Coleman played well. Ole Miss had 6 sacks and 10 tackles for loss in this game. They are probably, I think, leading the country in sacks at the moment. It was a situation to where South Carolina was completely outclassed. And if you were going to come for Ole Miss and talk all the noise that you talked incessantly for 8 months about how this game was circled, you had to put a better performance than this. You absolutely had to put a better performance than this. South Carolina had 1 sack in the game. Their vaunted defensive end did have 1 sack, and Ole Miss actually got a first down on that sack because of taunting. That was by Dylan Stewart. Tackles for loss, they had 7 in that game. Their vaunted defensive line. The best defensive line in that game played for Ole Miss. That wasn't particularly close. Interesting type stuff. I'm pretty fired up about the way that game played out, mainly because Ole Miss established an identity. And the identity going into the season was completely offensive ball. But over the short part of this season so far, Ole Miss's defense has gradually been climbing up the ladder of importance. And Ole Miss going for first downs offensively from minus territory, I think, is a thing of the past. Or at least it needs to be, because that just gifted 3 points to South Carolina. The only 3 points. South Carolina's only chance to score essentially was that. Ole Miss was able to keep them out of the end zone and do what they need to do by relying on their defense. Hey, try to get a first down, do the stuff necessary to get a first down. The fact that you have an offense that you have is fantastic, but do not put this defense in a bad situation. If you're at midfield, punt the ball to their 5-yard line and let the defense play. Dare the other team to go 95 yards against your defense, and there's not many teams in the Southeastern Conference that can do it. They just can't. This defense, especially the front 7, is too good. And on the back end of the defense, props to Pete Golding. They cleaned it up a lot. The drive surviving penalties were kind of a thing of the past. And props go to Pete Golding for getting that cleaned up. That was just fantastic and great to see, honestly. Really, really great stuff. Anyway, when we come back, we are going to talk about the other games. How about the Vanderbilt Commodores beating the Alabama Crimson Tide and rushing the field in Nashville? Corey Burton kind of called that earlier in the week and got reamed by Alabama fans for it. But Feinbaum is going to be excellent. But anyway, this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. It is the place to bet on which side of Ole Miss being 9.5 favorite tonight, covering easily against South Carolina. Even though that the over-under went under again, that over-under number is going to sink down because of the identity that Ole Miss is finding defensively. I think this defensive team is special right now. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. A new partner for the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is College Corner. It's your one-stop shop for all things Ole Miss. The color in South Carolina was powder. It looked absolutely fantastic. You can stop by the College Corner in Oxford, Ridgeland, or Flowood and pick up your perfect game day gear. And hey, Scott just got a bunch of the new Realtree Galaxy tumblers, and more stuff on the way is at College Corner. They're located off Fisk Avenue, right across from the new Chick-fil-A. Getting to the store is a breeze, and they have plenty of parking. And for those of you out of state, no worries. Visit collegecornerstore.com, where they turn around orders lightning fast. Trust me, this just isn't a pitch. College Corner is where I get all of my Rebel gear. So visit collegecorner.com or stop by the College Corner today. All right, we're going to take your comments a little bit, and we're going to get into the comment section, but I do want to give everybody a heads up about this. There is a hurricane coming in next week. It's going to arrive about Wednesday. It looks like it right now. It's projected to go directly over my house, and it's supposed to be a Category 1 or Category 2, which power outages and things like that should be the norm. This week might look a little bit different, and that is why. Please be patient. We're going to have John Forcade on Monday talking about the LSU game. We're going to try and have Bill Flowers on Wednesday, maybe interview him on Tuesday and get that up. And I'm going to try and film as many of the shows as I can ahead of time. If for some reason there is not a show, just realize that we don't have power. So, keep Central Florida in your prayers, because this one looks like it's going to go straight off on Tampa and go straight across Florida. This is like straight down I-4. All right, so let's look at the comments section today. Ashley Reed says, what a day. Vandy just beat Alabama, and not just beat Alabama, actually ran the clock and did 4-minute offense exactly the way. Over the last 6 quarters of football, Alabama's defense has not been good. Been legitimately bad, especially when you consider 4 of those quarters are against the Vanderbilt Commodores. They've given up somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70 points over 6 quarters. Not a good look. Sean Neeson says, defense showed out today, starting to think that might be the strength of the team. Yeah, you were right there with me. This was an identity-establishing game for Ole Miss. I think we are going to see a very rare thing of a Lane Kiffin offense deferring to his defense and coaching this more like a Saban team as this moves forward. I don't think you're going to see Ole Miss going for it from minus territory. I don't think stuff that is going to make it difficult on your defense is going to even happen. I think they're going to rely on Pete Golding to do this, and whenever they're going and what they have going, this is a playoff team. This defense is very hard to score the football against, and even with everything that's going on the offensive side of the ball, they can generally score enough points to win the game. Quaid Man says, hotty toddy man, anchor down. Missouri goes down too. Great day for college football. Tennessee is currently losing to Arkansas as well, by the way. So that is interesting. Will says, hotty toddy, William and Mary, Metairie, Louisiana. Matthew Mitchell, but about the Ole Miss game, I was pleased with the outcome. We covered. The defense looked great, but I was unhappy with the offensive execution. Too many boneheaded mistakes. Lane has to get this team focused. I think this team is going to look different the rest of the year. I think as you see how good this defense could be, I think it's going to be really easy for Lane and his staff to lean on this defense. So it's not going to be necessary that Jackson Dart and the offense has their A game. They just need to score 28 points in a game, and they're going to win every single game. Because it's like I said, we could have played 8 quarters today. South Carolina was not scoring a touchdown. They just weren't. What is with our offense? Just because we have a good defense does not mean we have to stop playing offense altogether. They did not stop playing offense. They just didn't do it at the level that they normally do it at. They did it on a level that protected the defense. And then the second half, they protected the defense a whole lot and was not risky with the football. Now, Jackson Dart basically got a little bit too reliant on the deep ball again. He did the downfield stuff that got him in trouble against Kentucky, and that caused a lot of incomplete passes. I genuinely think that Henry Parrish and Matt Jones, we need to give other running backs the ball a little bit and use the stable of running backs that Ole Miss has. Even Rashad Amos and Ulysses Bentley, I mean, they could have helped Ole Miss today. And you probably could not tell me that they couldn't help Ole Miss today. Garvin Keene said, Vandy just proved you have to play one game at a time at the SEC. Texas still goes to Nashville. Rebel fans show up in Baton Rouge, hotty toddy. That LSU game has just become absolutely massive. It's huge because if Ole Miss wins that game at LSU, that Kentucky game no longer matters. And looking at the other results around the SEC, is it possible that this season in the SEC is actually what we say the SEC is like every year, to where you have to show up every single week? Vandy is a legit good team. Kentucky's up and down, things like that. That defense for Kentucky is good. Tennessee might drop a game against Arkansas. Arkansas has given up 5 yards through a quarter right now, and they have 115 of total offense. Tennessee does not look particularly good as well. I think Ole Miss just started the trend of losing those games. Like Missouri completely got dumpster fired today. By the way, Steven, shout out to Navy and honestly Army as well for both being 5-0. The Army-Navy game is going to be very fun. It's going to be very awesome. I can't wait for that. Brad Ellis, defense won that game 100%. Yeah, and they should win every single game on Ole Miss's schedule because they're predictable. And the defense really did some work. 6 or 7 sacks today. I think they're up to like 25 in 6 games. It's pretty impressive to see exactly what they have. Mark Walsh says, big W, we will take it. Credit to the team. Yes. And to Mid-Carolina fans who wanted to troll in my comments for 8 months, what the heck was that? If you are going to come at me, if you are legitimately going to come at me, at least put out a performance that is respectable to where I can respect what you did as a team, as a person. But whenever you come at that, you genuinely looked like you were the worst team in the Southeastern Conference and you were acting like Alabama. It makes me wonder if you legitimately thought this was a good team and why that is the case. Why did Nick Saban and why did Kirk Herbstreit and why did Chris Marler and all those guys predict a South Carolina upset? Because that was a bad football team. That was a legitimately bad football team. I don't know. Jacob Holloway says the SEC runs through Vandy. That right now it absolutely does because Texas has to play in Nashville, and I'm not betting against Vandy right now. Also, Vandy should be favored against Auburn if we're going to be real. Ashley Reed, half of our team is hurt right now. Half our team is always hurt. And we also always said we did all the recruiting for a 16-game season. We'll prove it that now at this point. There's no excuses. The offense should have given us more. 27 points is enough. As long as this offense scores over 24, they've done enough. You don't need 2019 LSU Joe Burrow every single game when you have to outscore every single opponent. When the defense holds the opponent to 3 points, the first touchdown, when Henry Parrish scored 10 minutes into the first quarter, the game was over. It's just what it is. Hudson Albert says Dart and the deep ball connection was off, but the defense was dominant. Another week we go 1-0 and have improvement. Defense looks so good. So good. I got excited about that. David Chambers says, where are all those trolling South Carolina fans now? We shut your mouths and it was quiet in the stands for most of the day. Yeah, they booed Juice Wells one time, but it was pretty obvious that they were, I don't even know if they were the second best team in that competition. They might have been third or fourth, if we're going to be honest. I think the officials had more of a role in that game than South Carolina. And they had a better chance of making that more of a game. Trolling South Carolina fans, do not do that crap. You did it for 8 months about how this game was going to be circled and we're going to beat you and yeah, and doing all this. And then you just lay a complete egg to where, you were a joke today, South Carolina. Seriously, you were a joke. Oh, Michael Roberts, let's go Vandy. That was awesome. They deserve that. Dart doesn't seem like himself right now. Accuracy seems off. Yes. The wide open pass he missed to Juice Wells, a couple of deep balls that just didn't quite look right. The pass to Jordan Watkins that set up that touchdown to J.J. Pegues was underthrown as well. His ball placement is not where it normally has been. So we'll have to see exactly how that goes in the near future. Are we really only playing two running backs? It feels like we have 10 on the bench. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, Ole Miss needs to play more. I think that's going to happen with it looks like Henry Parrish being a little bit nicked up after this game and Matt Jones getting hurt as well. I do think against LSU, the Ulysses Bentley, the Rashad Amos, the Dominic Thomas, those guys are going to play a role in that game. Brian Scobie, hotty toddy, defense looked great. Offense still needs to get on the same page. They need to get healthy too. Their skill players are, as their offensive line is getting more healthy, their skill players are getting less healthy at the moment. Isaac Kessler, Ole Miss did not look good. If they want to beat LSU, they need to get their act together. South Carolina scored 33 points against that LSU team. And if Lenore Sellers, the quarterback that we just saw on the field, does not get hurt in that game, LSU gets beat by that South Carolina team. So do not try and doom scroll on what's going on. That LSU team is going to be an underdog. And if Ole Miss's offense plays the way, or Ole Miss's defense plays the way they did today, I don't think you necessarily have to worry about LSU. Glad we ran the ball better. Oh, we just tried to run the ball. Brad Ellis on with that one. Yeah, we just stayed with it instead of having a situation to where you had 3 carries in the first half. Hurston Williamson, Steven, I love you, man. Hotty toddy and go Vandy. I love Ole Miss, but I do think Jackson Dart has hit his ceiling. His ceiling right now is the playoffs. That's fine. He's very accurate. He's very good when he has to do. He is exactly what Ole Miss needs. It's not to where you're looking for improvement. You're looking for a final result because this is the senior year. This is the contract year. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Brian Wesley says Dart is holding the ball too long. Seems like his initial read is the deepest receiver route on the play. Yeah, that happens. Ole Miss runs a lot of second and third level RPOs, and that can get them in trouble at times. Warren Calder, we stumbled in the second, but good road win. Offensively, like I said, the second half, it was all about South Carolina. They knew couldn't score the ball. The second half was all about don't do anything stupid to let them back in the game and let the defense win the game. That's what the end of the game was. Brad Ellis, I was so glad to see both Juice and their team stayed civil. Yeah, it was something to where if South Carolina got going, it helped that they were so bad early on and they were just awful, atrocious. And the fans realized that South Carolina was in no place to win that game. Whenever that happened, South Carolina's fans kind of toned it down a little bit because otherwise it did feel like they were going to be really up for that game. He did not look like himself. Suntaran Perkins is a beast. He needs to be on the field. Yeah. Princely and Ellen did not play in this game, and Ole Miss did not miss him. Suntaran Perkins played like the player that we were all told that he would be, and he was a menace. He was essentially Harold Perkins, the best of Harold Perkins from 2 years ago. So it should be pretty good. Our D is greater than our O. Our D is elite. Our O is good, but they're not 100%. Get healthy, and they'll be elite too. Good, but weird game. Yeah. 27-3. That's the lowest amount of points given up to an SEC team since 2015. I think that was probably that Texas A&M game. Swamp Puppy, we looked good. Also glad Bama lost. Like I said, Bama's given up like 80 points in the last 6 quarters, and 4 of them are to Vanderbilt. Absolutely nuts. With that Alabama loss, our road to the CFB looks a lot better. Yeah. It's a situation. I do not think any team is going to be undefeated in the SEC title game. Ole Miss has just as much chance as anybody else. It's absolutely nuts to think about what Ole Miss is doing right now. Anyway, when we come back, we will continue to talk about your comments and see what's up. Ole Miss beats Mid-Carolina 27-3 in a very big game for Ole Miss football. They're back on track, and they kind of proved that Kentucky game was a fluke. Stick around. Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipts, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. Vaught Hemingway doesn't have a bad seat, but you can see exactly what it will look like before you buy the ticket. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might even be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so we are back. We're going to do this for a couple more minutes. Sorry, got to keep it under 30 minutes so the people in Locked On can be happy and put this on the fast channels, the college sports channels and stuff like that. But I do want to get as many comments as we can. Tim Skelton says, hotty toddy. David says, the report of the death of the Ole Miss football program were greatly exaggerated. Yeah, it's weird how that works, right? Doug Miller says, I don't like how beat up we got in that game injury-wise. Next week will be tough with how banged up we are. Defensively, I think we're going to be all right. Michael Roberts, I do not think LSU can score 3 touchdowns, and I've seen multiple teams put up points against LSU. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'd favor LSU. I wouldn't. When you look at the two defenses, it's advantage Ole Miss. When you look at the two offenses, it might be even. If you look at the special teams, especially with the way Frazier Messina is just booming the ball right now, underrated thing that's going on. He is killing the football right now, and that means that Ole Miss gets to win the field position battle as well. That's pretty cool. Brian Wesley says, honestly think part of the offensive problem is Dart is not making the same decision he was making last year during off-schedule plays. He's looking for stuff that's just not there. That's probably something to that, honestly. Charles Vault says, shame on whoever counted us out. We dropped them bombs. Hotty damn toddy. Yes. Swamp Puppy says, I hope Tennessee loses. That would be hilarious. Ole Miss and LSU will be a good game. Ole Miss by 10. I'm kind of there with you, Tim. That is pretty close to the score. I'm already thinking about what's going to happen in that game. Hey, Russ, South Carolina had 1 field goal, just saying. And that was on a play that Lane Kiffin basically gave them going forward in minus territory. Brian Scobie, hotty toddy from Dallas, Texas. I like that we saw the ball spread around more, but we still need more tight end usage and other running backs. Yes, there's still avenues for them to get better. I honestly believe that as well. Be Creepy says, I knew we lost when Nick Saban picked South Carolina to win, just like LSU when they said they played it on college football 20 times and Carolina won 13 times. Y'all played better and Carolina just took it. Thank you very much, Be Creepy. You're more than welcome to stop by here. Awesome. That's pretty good of you, honestly. Fantastic. Everybody hated on Ole Miss all week. I'm glad we got the W. Yes, indeed. Whether one RN does better than the other in practice running back, they're all supposed to know the same playbook. I just can't see not using fresh legs throughout the game. There's so many comments. I'm not going to get to all of them. Be sure to join this podcast tomorrow night for the reaction roundtable whenever we do that. And we'll try to get to your comments on that. Hayden Tilslow says, I'm glad with the win. However, this is probably the most undisciplined team I've ever watched. The penalties have to stop if we want to make the playoffs. Penalties did stop in the back end of the defense. I think they deserve a ton of credit for that. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ole Miss beat South Carolina 27-3 in a big game. Now Ole Miss has the LSU Tigers and what will be the new biggest game of the season. And we're going to talk about it all week long. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later. Hotty toddy, everyone.